Welcome back to Surviving Alzheimer's. I'm Terry, and if you're new here, welcome. This is a space for real talk about Alzheimer's disease. Here we talk about memory loss, caregiving, and what it actually looks like to walk this path. Today, we're kicking off a new series called Rewriting Your Future, the New Vision of Life and Memory Loss. And to be honest, this series is really personal for me in ways that go beyond the journey that I experienced with my mom. This first episode is called Breaking Free from the Old Story. And what I mean by that is we've all inherited a narrative about what Alzheimer's is and what memory loss means. Stories that are handed down through generations, stories that we've seen in movies or heard whispered in doctors' offices. They're stories that we've heard from well-meaning people that didn't know what else to say. And a lot of these stories, they're just not true anymore, or at least they're not the only truth anymore. So today, I want to talk about it. What those old narratives are and why they hurt us. How stigma shapes the way we treat people with memory loss, and what it looks like to create a new identity that isn't defined by a diagnosis alone. And most importantly, how to actually do this work of breaking free. What I've learned over the last 6 years as my mom's study partner through a Leqembi clinical trial, the story we tell ourselves about this disease matters enormously. It shapes whether we seek treatment, whether we have any hope at all, or whether we keep living or start dying before we're even gone. So let's dive right in. I want to start by naming the narrative most of us grew up around with the Alzheimer's story and memory loss. It goes something like this. Memory loss is the end. It's a slow, cruel erasure of everything that made someone who they are. It's watching the person you love disappear piece by piece until nothing remains but a shell. It's tragedy with only one possible ending: decline, suffering, loss, and eventually death. That's the story I believed when my mom was diagnosed. I thought I knew exactly what was coming. I had watched my grandmother go through it in the mid-90s when we had literally nothing to offer. She was offered no treatments, no hope. All we could do was watch and wait for her to rot and die. So when Mom got her diagnosis in 2018, I felt this crushing weight of inevitability, like the ending was already written and all we could do was turn the pages until we got there. That narrative almost broke me, because if memory loss means the person is really gone, if it means there's nothing we can do except watch them fade away, if it means their value as a human being diminishes with every forgotten name and every missed appointment, then what's the point in fighting? But here's what I've come to understand. That story is not the whole truth. It never really was. Yes, Alzheimer's is devastating. And yes, there are losses and grief and challenges that are absolutely real. And I'm not sitting here minimizing any of that. But that old narrative leaves out so much. It leaves out the possibility of treatment that can actually change the trajectory of the disease. It leaves out the moments of connection and joy that still happen, even in the middle of memory loss. It leaves out the agency and dignity that people with Alzheimer's still deserve and can still exercise. It leaves out the fact that science has fundamentally changed what's possible in the last 5 years. And most importantly, it leaves out this truth. A person with memory loss is still a whole person. They're not already gone. They're not a tragedy in motion. They're not less valuable because their brain isn't working the way it used to. They're still here, and that matters. So, where did this old narrative come from? Why is it so deeply embedded in how we think about Alzheimer's and dementia? Part of it is generational. They're the experiences we had growing up. For decades, well, really, for all of human history, until about 5 years ago, there weren't any disease-modifying treatments for Alzheimer's. The only things we had were medications that might temporarily ease symptoms, medications like Aricept and Namenda. That was it. So families watched their loved ones decline, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. That experience gets passed down. It becomes the expectation. Part of it is how the media portrays Alzheimer's. Think about every movie or every TV show that you've ever seen that featured a character with dementia. What's the story arc? Almost always, it's about loss. The person becomes unrecognizable, the family grieves, the ending is sad, blah, blah, blah. We don't see stories about people who get early diagnosis and start treatment and maintain a really good quality of life for many years. We don't see stories about families who adapt and find new ways to connect. We don't see a full range of what this experience can look like. And part of it, honestly, it's ageism. Our culture does not value older adults the way we should. We treat aging itself like a disease, like something to fight against, rather than it being a natural part of life. So when an older person develops memory loss, there's this underlying message that their best years are behind them anyways, that their life doesn't matter much anymore. All of these things combine to create a narrative that is deeply damaging. And it's not just people with Alzheimer's, but everyone who loves them and everyone who's at risk for it. Because if you believe the old story, you're less likely to seek an early diagnosis. You're less likely to pursue treatment. You are less likely to hold on to hope. And hope matters, not false hope, not toxic positivity that ignores reality, but genuine hope that's grounded in what's actually possible now. So let me tell you what changed for me. The moment that shifted everything was when Mom and I were sitting in a treatment room at Kirwan Medical Center in 2022, when I overheard the staff outside saying very loving goodbyes to a patient. And afterward, I asked, why is he being dismissed? Did he quit? Did his treatment not work? And then I was told he was leaving his protocol and the study because the plaque in his brain had all been successfully removed and that the protocol was complete. I remember responding with, "Wait, what?" Then I realized if the plaque was gone, he must be cured. Of course, there was nothing more that they could tell me, but it was in this moment that I realized, for the first time in history of mankind, we have people who are surviving Alzheimer's disease. This is not about giving up. This is about fighting back. At the time, Leqembi was not even FDA approved. We were participating in a clinical trial that was allowing us to enter uncharted territory. But here was a treatment that could actually remove the amyloid plaques from Mom's brain. Not just slow things down, but potentially alter the course of the disease. Then I realized the old story was already obsolete. Science had moved forward while the cultural narrative stayed stuck in the past. And if science had changed, then our story could change too. Mom was still sitting in the treatment chair reading a magazine, and I sat down at my computer and wrote my first Alzheimer's survivor business plan outline. There have been many of them, but that was the first one. It was in that moment that I also sat down and created the first Alzheimer's survivor logo and the Facebook and Instagram page. I knew, I was confident beyond a shadow of a doubt that it would be my job to share this information with every single human who would listen to me talk. Now I want to talk about stigma, because this is where the old narrative does its most insidious damage. Stigma is what happens when we take the old story, the story that says memory loss means you're already gone, and use it to treat people as if they're less than fully human. I've watched this happen with my mom, and it makes me really angry. Here's what stigma looks like in real life. It's when healthcare providers talk about the person with memory loss instead of to them, even when they're sitting right there in the room. It's when family members start making decisions for someone without asking what they want, because they won't remember anyway. It's when people stop inviting someone to social events because they assume the person won't enjoy it or won't know where they are. It's when caregivers speak in condescending, overly simple language, like they're talking to a child instead of an adult. It's when someone's preferences, opinions, and choices get dismissed because we've decided their brain can't be trusted anymore. And let me be very clear about something. My mother has Alzheimer's disease, but she is also still here. She still has thoughts. She still has feelings. She still has preferences. And she still deserves dignity and respect and autonomy. Yes, there are things she can't do anymore. Yes, there are decisions she needs help with, but she's not an empty shell. She is not a tragedy. She is not already gone. And yet, I've had to fight repeatedly to get people to treat her like the whole person she still is. I've had medical professionals talk over her like she wasn't there. I've had well-meaning family members make plans for her without asking what she wanted. I've watched people speak to her in that sing-song voice you use with toddlers, And I've had to gently, and once not so gently, redirect them. That's what stigma does. It takes the old narrative, memory loss equals loss of personhood, and turns it into action, into the way we treat people. And it's cruel. Challenging stigma means we have to actively resist these impulses. We have to keep seeing the person in front of us as a whole human being, even when their brain isn't working the way it used to. That means speaking to them, not just about them, but including them in decisions about their own care, asking what they want instead of assuming we know, recognizing that memory isn't the only measure of a person's value, treating every interaction as an opportunity for connection, not proof of decline. And here's the part that hurts, the part that really breaks my heart, is people with memory loss know when they're being dismissed. They know when you're talking down to them. They know when you've stopped seeing them as fully human. And that knowledge, that feeling of being invisible, of being less than, causes a lot of pain. We can do better than this. We have to do better than this. All right. So we've talked about the old story and the stigma it creates. Now let's talk about what comes next. How do we actually create a new identity, one that acknowledges the diagnosis without being defined by it? It's hard work. I'm not going to pretend it's easy, but it is possible and it is necessary. Here's what I've learned from watching my mom navigate this. An Alzheimer's diagnosis changes things. It absolutely does. It alters the trajectory of a human life. There are losses, there are adjustments, there are things that become harder or even impossible, but it doesn't have to erase everything else about who the person is. My mother is not an Alzheimer's patient. She is a woman who has Alzheimer's disease. My mother is a fighter. My mother is a survivor. She's still funny. She still loves her crafts, even though she doesn't do them as much anymore. She still lights up when her kids and her grandkids visit. She still has very strong, detailed opinions about our current political system. She still laughs at the same kinds of jokes, and she still gets annoyed at the same kinds of things that annoyed her in the past. She's not an Alzheimer's patient. She's still Gail. Creating space for a new identity means recognizing that a diagnosis is not an ending. It's a plot development. The story continues even though it looks different than what we expected. So what does this look like in practice for people living with memory loss? You're allowed to grieve what's changing. That grief is real and valid, but you're also allowed to keep living, to keep trying, to keep hoping. You're allowed to define yourself by more than your diagnosis. You can still pursue treatment options that might change your trajectory. You can still make choices about how you want to spend your days. You can still stay connected in activities that bring you joy, activities that bring new routines that work with your current reality instead of fighting against it. You can form meaningful relationships with people who actually see you, not just your diagnosis. And this is the important part. You get to decide what matters to you. not your doctor, not your family, you. Maybe what matters is staying in your home as long as possible. Maybe it's continuing a hobby that you love. Maybe it's spending time with your grandchildren. Maybe it's traveling while you still can. Whatever it is, you get to say. You get to prioritize. You get to shape this chapter of your story. For caregivers and loved ones, your role is not to become the sole author of their story. Your role is to be a supporting character, someone who helps them continue writing their own narrative for as long as possible. That means asking what they want instead of assuming you know. It means protecting their autonomy even when it's inconvenient or scary. It means celebrating small wins instead of dwelling on losses, creating opportunities for them to still contribute, still matter, still be seen, and find ways to adapt activities instead of just eliminating them. And another thing that I've had to learn the hard way is your grief is valid. Your fear is valid. Your exhaustion is valid. Your grief shouldn't eclipse the life that they are still living. Your fear shouldn't prevent them from taking risk. Your exhaustion shouldn't become their problem. This is the balance we're always trying to strike, supporting without smothering and helping without taking over, protecting without infantilizing. It's not easy, and I don't always get it right, but the intention matters. The effort to keep seeing them as a whole person, that matters. So if the old story is memory loss equals tragic decline and nothing more, what's the new story? Well, the new story is more complex. It's more nuanced. And it's more honest about both the challenges and the possibilities. The new narrative says, yes, Alzheimer's is hard, and there is still hope. Yes, there will be losses, and there can still be meaningful moments. Yes, the future is uncertain, and you still have agency in how you face it. Yes, this disease is bigger than any one person, and you are not powerless. Let me tell you what this looks like in my life with Mom. When Mom started Leqembi in 2020, we didn't know what would happen. The drug wasn't even FDA approved yet. We were taking a huge leap of faith. Now, 6 years later, she's still here in ways that I couldn't have even imagined back then. She's not the same. She's not going to pretend she's unchanged. There are things she can't do anymore. There are conversations that are harder. There are moments when the disease is very present and very painful. But she's also not the worst case scenario we were told to prepare for. She still recognizes all of us. She still participates in family gatherings. She still has a sense of humor. She still has preferences and personality and presence. Mom is still a newlywed, and she's still enjoying setting up her new home with her new husband. In fact, they just returned from their second honeymoon a few weeks ago. They're planning a cruise in the spring. The treatment, it didn't cure her, but Leqembi gave us time, better time, time where she's still Mom, she's still Gail, and that matters. The new narrative also includes scientific reality that the old story couldn't account for. We now have treatments that can actually remove the disease process from the brain, not just mask symptoms, but actually alter the course. Leqembi and Kisunla are both FDA approved and available right now. There are more treatments in development, treatments that target tau tangles, that target inflammation, that improve the synaptic function. Early diagnosis is possible through biomarker testing, through PET scans and blood tests and genetic screening. This doesn't mean everyone will have access. It doesn't mean everyone will respond. And it doesn't mean that this is easy or simple or guaranteed, but it does mean the possibilities are different than they were 2 years ago. Actually, with Leqembi's new autoinjector, the possibilities are even brighter than they were 4 months ago. That's how fast things are changing. This changes the story. It has to. The new story also makes space for different approaches. Not everyone will choose anti-amyloid therapy. Some people will opt for oral medications like Aricept and Namenda. Some, like me, will focus on Dr. Bredeson's Alzheimer's pre-code and recode protocol. It helps to prevent Alzheimer's, and for some, it helps to treat Alzheimer's disease through lifestyle intervention, diet, exercise, brain stimulation, and supplementation. Some will decide not to treat at all. And whatever your choice, that's okay. The new narrative isn't prescriptive. It doesn't say there's only one right way to do this. What it does say is you have options. You have choices, and these choices matter. So we've talked about what the old story is, why it's harmful, and what a new story might look like. Now let's talk about the practical work of actually breaking free from the old narrative, because this isn't just intellectual. It's not just about thinking differently. It's about living differently. It's about making different choices and telling ourselves different things. Here's what that work looks like. Step 1, name the old story out loud. You can't change a narrative that you haven't acknowledged. So start by actually saying it. Admit to yourself, I believed that memory loss meant the person was already gone. Also, I believed there was nothing we could do. Or I believed that her life was over after the diagnosis. Whatever your version of the old story is, name it out loud. Say it out loud. Write it down, because once you've named it, you can start to change it. Step 2, gather evidence of a different story. Look for examples that contradict the old narrative. People living well with memory loss. Treatments are making a difference. Many are having moments of connection and joy that can still happen. People who've maintained a really good quality of life for years after diagnosis. This isn't about being Pollyanna. It's about being accurate. The old story is incomplete, so find the parts that were left out. Step 3, make one different choice. You don't have to overhaul everything at once. Start small. If the old story says people with memory loss can't make decisions, challenge it by asking your loved one what they want to do. If the old story says there's no point in pursuing treatment, challenge it by scheduling an appointment with a neurologist to at least explore options. If the old story says life is over, challenge it by planning something, anything to look forward to. One different choice creates momentum, and momentum builds. Step 4, find community. You can't do this alone. You need other people who are also working to break free from the old narrative. And that might be support groups like our care circles. We have care circles every Tuesday and Thursday night. This is where people come in and share real life experiences, not tragedy stories. We have online communities where people talk about treatment options and about the quality of life. There are advocacy organizations that are fighting for better access and for better outcomes. The old story thrives in isolation. The new story needs community to survive. Lastly, step 5, practice radical acceptance and radical hope. This is the hardest part, so stay with me for a second. Radical acceptance means I see the reality of this disease. I acknowledge the losses, and I don't minimize the pain or the fear or the grief. Radical hope means I also refuse to surrender to despair. I believe that change is possible. I believe that this moment is not the final word. You don't have to choose between accepting reality and holding on to hope. You can do both. In fact, you have to do both if you're going to break free from the old story. Because the old narrative wants you to believe that hope is naive, that acceptance means giving up. But that's a false choice. The most powerful place you can stand is right in the middle, 1 foot in reality and 1 foot in possibility. Let's bring this one home. Breaking free from the old story about Alzheimer's and memory loss is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice. It's a choice you make over and over again. Some days will be easier than others. Some days the old narrative will come rushing back in, and you'll have to fight to hold on to the new one. It's okay. That's part of the process. What I want you to take away from this episode is this. You do not have to accept the story you were handed. You can write a new one that includes struggles, yes, but also one that includes strength, one that makes space for grief while leaving room for hope, one that acknowledges what's changing while celebrating what remains. And here's what I know for sure. My mom is not a tragedy. Her life with Alzheimer's is not just a story of loss. There's still joy. There's still connection. There's still Gail. And as long as she's here, I'm going to keep seeing her, really seeing her as the whole person she is. If you're walking this path, whether you're the person with memory loss or the person walking alongside them, I see you, and I know how hard this is. I know how scared you are. I know how heavy the grief feels some days. And I also know that you're stronger than you think you are. You're braver than you feel, and you're more capable than the old story would have you believe. You can do this. We can do this. We are doing this together. Next week, we're going to talk about designing your new normal. We're going to put practical strategies in place for building routines, systems, and environments that support thriving, not just surviving. But for this week, just sit with this. The old story doesn't get to be the only story anymore. You get to write the new story. If this story resonated with you, please share it with another caregiver or family member who needs to hear it. Leave a review if you can. Please subscribe, comment, and do all the clickety things. It really helps for other people to find this podcast. If you're navigating treatment decisions or if you need help creating your own new narrative, I would love to help you work through that. You can schedule a free 10-minute clarity call by simply calling me. My number is 214-924-6102. The show notes, the resources, and a full transcript are available below in the notes. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting this podcast. And remember, you're not alone. I see you. I'm right here with you. I'm Terry. Until next time, please take good care of yourself.